Hi, my name's Alexander Robertson, and this is work that I did with Walid, Magdy and Sharon Goldwater, looking at how readers connect the emoji they see in messages online to author identities. So first, some background information. Linguistic variation is very strongly associated with aspects of identity. The way that we sound says something about who we are to other people. We manipulate this deliberately ourselves a lot of the time because we express ourselves through our language in terms of not just what we say but also how we say it. And when we hear other people speaking, we infer their identity through their language use as well. And in both cases, this can be like a conscious or subconscious process. So an example of is a conscious process. You're giving a talk to people. You want these people to know that you are someone who really knows this topic, and you'll use specific vocabulary with very specific technical meaning to let people know that you know what these words mean and you're using them correctly. You know this area. More on the subconscious level would be things, very subtle things, for example, related to your pronunciation. So the way that your vowels sound will say a lot about, not necessarily like who you are as a person, but where you grew up or where you went to school, or something like this. More on the social side of things. We know from previous research that Twitter users express identity through their skin-toned emoji usage. So they use emoji tones that match their profile photo skin tone. And it's very rare for users to use other skin tones. People tend to use one skin tone all the time. Knowing that people express identity through emoji in this way, we are interested in, do people also perceive it? Is there a symmetry there? First, messages containing darker toned emoji will be associated with black authors, and lighter toned emoji with white authors. But we think that there will be a clear connection between what people see and what people perceive in terms of identity. For black readers, we think they'll more often associate the emoji they see with a specific author identity. And the reason we think this is because based on previous research shows that black authors are more likely to use skin-toned emoji in the first place, and if they do use them, then they'll use them more often compared to other ethnicities. So we think that having more experience with these emoji, we think that they'll also be more amenable to connecting them with identities when they are in the role of the reader. We also think that black readers will more often attribute the default yellow emoji to a white author identity, because we see from previous results white users are more likely to use the yellow emoji. But there's also been a lot of discussion over the neutrality of the yellow emoji, but we think that it's not going to be neutral, because there's an imbalance in usage, but there's also a difference in just the color characteristics of yellow. Yellow is closer to the lighter end of the emoji scale than the darker end of the scale. But we also have some more open-ended research questions. First, what happens when a message has matching identity signals in emoji and linguistic features? So the emoji signal we talked about here already is just the color of the emoji, but linguistic features are things like the syntax, potentially the topic, the vocabulary that you use, because these can be very associated strongly with specific identities as well. So we are wondering is when there's a match between these two signals, what happens? So is there a boost? The association with this matching identity, is it stronger? Is there no difference, or is there some other effect? If there's no difference, then this suggests that there's maybe the signal encoded in emoji is maybe not very distinguishable from the linguistic one, that overrides it. But if there is a difference, then compared to when we're only got one signal, then we might be able to argue that the emoji and linguistic signals are encoded separately and people are differentially sensitive to them. Research question 2 is obviously the opposite of this. What happens when these signals don't match? There's a conflict. Do they pick one? Do they go with the emoji signal? Do they go with the identity signal? Or is there no way? There's no pattern to it. And then finally, are there differences in how black and white readers resolve this conflict in the signals? So as I said, in the hypotheses, we know from previous work that black authors express their identity through these emoji more often and are more likely to do so. So does this greater experience with these types of emoji for this purpose, does it have an impact on how they interpret the signals when they're in conflict? So the methodology we used for this is we have an experiment that we do using stimuli, which are texts where we've manipulated the emoji content, but also the linguistic cues. So to do this, we took texts from Twitter which were written by black and by white authors, and we normed these for the linguistic cues to the author identity. And for the norming, what we do is we just show lots of these texts to lots of black and white readers, and we get them to say, who do you think wrote this? Were they likely to be black or white? And then we can then categorize the text as being more linguistically black, more linguistically white, based on the ratios of the judgments that you get for there. We also manipulate, say, the emoji content to have either no emoji, a darker toned emoji, a lighter toned emoji, or just the default yellow one. And you can see here some examples here of the text that we used, and also the linguistic bias that the participants perceived these texts to have, and then the emoji that we manipulated on the end. These are the original emoji that came with these texts, so we're not adding emoji to text in an unnatural way. These are texts that did actually have emoji to begin with. In the task, it's a forced binary choice task. So here we have we had 480 participants that we showed text to. Half of these participants are black, half are white, and we manipulate the text in the way that we just described to manipulate the emoji and the text signals for identity in them. The question that we asked was, what ethnicity do you think the author is? And there's a forced binary choice. They can only select black or white. In this paradigm, the idea is that if there's any kind of association between the manipulated and the factor that you're interested in, if there is any connection, then the ratio of judgments will not be 50-50. It will be skewed more towards one or the other. And if the ratio is 50-50, then it means that there's probably no association between these. It's very good for tapping into subconscious associations, because people don't get a lot of time to think about it. They're instructed that if they're not sure, then just pick at random. So the results for hypothesis 1 and hypothesis 2 together are shown in this graph. The grey bars here are the default, sort of the baseline measures. So this is when we show people just a text which has no linguistic bias and no emoji content whatsoever. And you can see that these are basically at at chance level. This is the red line, which is what you would expect. There's no signal there to identity, so the ratio of judgments is going to be 50-50. However, when you add a darker toned emoji or a lighter toned emoji to these, then things change quite dramatically. So the ratios move very quickly in favor of whatever the tone of the emoji is. So messages containing darker toned emoji are associated with black authors, and lighter toned emoji are associated with white authors. Hypothesis 2 was that we thought that there would be a difference in the black and the white readers here, but this isn't what we found. So there was no difference here between black and white participants in how they judge these emoji when they're added to text. Hypothesis 3 results here again. There's very slight differences here. Black readers do more often attribute the default yellow emoji to a white author identity. Looking at the white authors, we see that actually the effect is more pronounced there for the white readers here. So black readers do associate the yellow emoji with a white identity, but so too do white readers as well. And then for our open-ended research questions, what we found was that when there's a match between the emoji and the linguistic signals, then the effect is boosted. So there's not like a floor or ceiling effect from having just text or just emoji. When things don't match, the picture is a bit less clear, and we go into more detail in that in the paper. I won't cover that here. But research question 3: are there differences in how black and white readers resolve the conflict? Overall, no, but again, we go into more detail in the paper on that. So overall, looking at the conclusions from this, you see, emoji can be sociolinguistic variables. Expression of identity through emoji it's very readily understood by readers. So if this works for skin-toned emoji, could it potentially work for other emoji as well that don't have such overt signals of identity? But this also means that there's possibly potential for deception. So, you think about it online, you're trying to trick people into associating your content with a particular type of person. Then you could potentially do this by manipulating obviously the text content, but also the emoji content, just as a small signal that, as you can see, can boost association with particular identities. Another thing to think about here, though, is that also you can unintentionally reveal your identity. In our previous study, even users who didn't have a profile photo would use emoji these emoji in the same way that users with a profile photo would use them. So, in order to figure out, a little bit of demographic information about users, you simply need to look at the most common skin tone emoji that they use, and so it's kind of potentially for revealing some aspect of their identity that they might not want to do because they're not using a profile picture. Finally, I think something that comes out of this is that the default options that we use in systems are not necessarily neutral. So we have to be very unintentional of, especially this kind of like white first design. So with emoji, they started off as white pre 2015, especially on Apple, maybe not on other platforms. But then the skin tone modifiers were added, and then the idea that the yellow became the default. But as we can see from here, there's a strong association between the default and one particular type of identity. So I think for people who are designing these sorts of systems, who have to put in a default, then you should think quite carefully about that, especially if your system is relating to how people express themselves and their identity.